the Washington, D.C. area. It's the Inside Scoop. All the news that our viewers want to know. Now, here's the host.
Welcome to Inside Scoop Virginia. I'm Bettina Lawton and I'm your host. And we are doing one of our Veterans Day shows. As everybody knows, Memorial Day is at the end of the month, and so we are talking with veterans. We have with us for an encore appearance, Gary Kelch. He retired from the Navy in 2007 after 30 years of service in the active and reserve forces. In 2008, he joined the Veterans of Foreign War Post 7327 in Springfield, where he served as the post commander from 2010 to 2014. And in recognition for all of the work that the post did, they received the All-American Post Award and the 2014 All-State Post. Gary is currently the elected VFW District 10 commander. He is running for another term in the elections to be held this week. And he is a program manager now at the Naval Sea Systems Command in D.C. Joshua Lawton Bellis, a familiar name to many of you, is also joining us again. He retired from the Army in 2009. He did 2 tours in Iraq as a combat medic. He was the commander of Post 8469, which was just named an all-state post this year. He is currently the inspector for District 10 of the VFW. He is a program manager at Novetta, handling the NOIS program, I think is how you say it, which is a cyber analytics solution. He is the founder, writer, and editor of the Inveterate Veteran online magazine, and he previously worked at the Department of Veterans Affairs. So I welcome both you, Gary and Josh, to the show to talk about veterans this month. I want to tell our audience what the VFW is for those who may see the signs everywhere coming in and out of towns across the United States. It is a service organization. It has more than 1.9 million veterans. It dates back to 1899. It was chartered by Congress, which I did not know. Its objectives include preserving and advocating for veterans' rights, advocating a strong national defense, promoting patriotism, and serving local communities. It also lobbies Congress on behalf of veterans, monitors care and seeks assistance for veterans, ensures veterans receive their earned entitlements, and provides assistance for the families of deployed troops, all of which is a large undertaking. I want to thank you guys for coming. And the very first thing that I want to ask, because we do tend to do at least 2 veteran-related shows a year, one in May and then, of course, one in November, because Veterans Day is November. So why are there 2 national veterans holiday, Gary? Why isn't there just one, Veterans Day?
Both holidays have a different purpose. Veterans Day is focused on the veterans that are serving and the veterans who have served, and is an opportunity for the nation to honor those who are serving or who have served. Memorial Day has the distinction of being a day to honor those who have paid the ultimate price and given their life for our country, and it is a day to honor not only them but their families who are missing them and have also paid the price.
And Memorial Day is the one that got started around the Civil War, right? That's the older?
Yes. Right after the Civil War, the Grand Army of the Republic started what they called Decoration Day. And that was a day to go out in May and decorate the graves of soldiers with flowers. They chose May because they knew that by then all the flowers would be blooming across the country. Later on, it was adopted as Memorial Day for all veterans who have given their life in all wars, and became Memorial Day.
And so Memorial Day is where you have those red flowers. People are standing outside of the grocery stores or whatever, and what is that all about? Why they're little paper flowers?
In 1922, the Veterans of Foreign Wars adopted what they call the Buddy Poppy, as the memorial flower for our fallen soldiers. And they distributed each year on Memorial Day and Veterans Day to help honor and educate the public on the sacrifice of service. The poppy actually comes from World War I. Folks our age would remember the poem. I don't know if they teach it in school today. Joel McCrea wrote a poem on Flanders Fields. On Flanders Fields where poppies grow, between the crosses, row on row. should be familiar to many people. And from that poem, the tradition of poppies to honor fallen soldiers became a VFW program.
Now, I'm never quite sure when somebody approaches me with those outside, I'm supposed to give them money? Is there a minimum price one has to pay for these? How does that all work?
Poppies are never sold. They're a matter of honor and remembrance for our fallen. Quite often there are donations offered from the general public when we do distribute poppies. And those donations go to support the VFW's veterans programs and also our National Home for Children in Eaton's Rapid, Michigan.
Okay, so who's at this National Home for Children? Is that veterans, orphans, or?
Well, that's how it started. Orphans of veterans of the war. And it has, today, there are entire families living there who either their veteran is deployed and they can't survive on the economy, or they've lost their veteran and are having hard times. So it's a place for families to go and to have care and a place to stay.
And can they stay there forever if somebody dies in service, or is it meant to be transitional?
The objective is transitional. Get them established, get them started, provide a space for the children for education, and help them to get back on their feet and back into society.
Okay, I didn't know you guys had that. So let's, in terms of you've got a lot of veteran-related organizations like the American Legion and the VFW. Is the distinction that to be in the VFW you actually had to be serving with a foreign war? It's obviously in your name, as opposed to the American Legion, anybody who was ever in the service?
Right. The American Legion focuses on all veterans who served during wartime, whether they were in conflict or not. The Veterans of Foreign Wars focuses on those who have combat experience and expeditionary experience.
What is the difference between combat and expeditionary?
For instance, in myself, I was on submarines.
Okay.
I have a Naval Expeditionary Medal for submarine operations in the North Atlantic during the Cold War. So while I never stepped on the battlefield, I received an Expeditionary Medal for where we went and what we did.
Okay. All right. So what's the main focus of the VFW today? We went through, there were like 4 major things that they do in terms of veterans' rights and advocacy and all of that. Is there something specific that the VFW focuses on, or are they still that broad-based?
Well, at the local level, the focus is on community service and camaraderie amongst veterans.
Okay. That's
your local post. It's a place to gather for veterans, and it's a place for which to operate from in doing good community work.
Okay.
At the national level, it is the advocacy on Capitol Hill for veterans' benefits, veterans' rights, ensuring that those coming back from conflict are taken care of.
So as the commander of the district, what are you supposed to do?
It's an administrative oversight of what they call District 10 in Virginia. There are 13 districts in Virginia. 10 is the posts between Leesburg, Virginia and Dale City, Virginia. And essentially it is my job to coordinate those posts, to administratively oversee them, ensure that they're doing the things that they're supposed to be doing in order to maintain the charter that we have received from Congress and provide some leadership.
Okay. And Josh, you're listed as the inspector. So you inspect? What do you inspect?
He's my enforcer.
He's your
I was
enforcer.
going to say, I am the enforcer.
Okay, wow.
So the reality is the VFW, like a lot of organizations, are both, as Gary said, we're here for help, to serve as a nonprofit. But we also, as all nonprofits need to do, need to operate within AR charters and be the financial underpinnings, right, that support our programs. And so as a district inspector, it's a dual-hatted role. One, to make sure that they're in compliance with all of the Commonwealth laws, right, so that they're actually incorporated. Other ones with the VFW to make sure they're within the bylaws, to make sure National VFW has certified them. And then there's a financial aspect of it, which is to go there and audit their books as an auditor to make sure that as the final check, there isn't any malfeasance going on, which none of our posts in the district have, and that there is good financial stewardship to make sure that some of these individuals know that, look, as an organization, we're not just here for ourselves, we're also here for the future. And hopefully that's not just 20 years, 30 years, 50 years in the future, but that's for as long as we have veterans for. And so that's helping them, remind them that while we always want to do good, we do need to look at the bottom line. So that's what the district inspector does.
Okay, now how many posts are actually in District 10 then?
10 posts.
10 posts.
Oh, there's 10 posts.
There's 10 posts, and we have the largest post in the world. Excuse me. So Dale City, which is comprises of 2,500 members.
In one post?
At one post. At one post.
Wow, I didn't realize they got that big. I always thought they were like 100, 150 type.
We do have our smallest post is about 130, Alexandria, and we have Dale City, which is the behemoth in the country.
Good Lord. That is huge. I want to talk a little bit before we go to break. We've got about 2 minutes, so this conversation will probably carry over. But I saw that last week the VFW, along with the Disabled American Veterans, sued the Department of Veterans Affairs about some new rule that they had put in. Josh, do you have any idea what that's all about?
So the lawsuit centers around the changing of the way in which claims would be accepted by the Department of Veterans Affairs.
And are these the claims where a year or so ago there was all this media coverage saying, oh, you're a year behind in processing claims? Are those the types of claims we're talking about, or are these something different?
So there's two main buckets of claims that when you heard about from the media, they were referencing. The first one was what was called IDES, the Independent Disability Evaluation System. That was for men and women who were wounded in service, wounded normally in combat. And that was for us to be able to, and according with the DoD as well, to be able to process them out of the military while at the same time providing them with VA benefits. Okay. Something that before 2008 wasn't done. They would be sent out of the military, and then they would have to submit a claim to the VA, a highly inefficient process. The second one, though, which is what you mentioned, was the idea of a disability claim for veterans who have left the service and have incurred some type of service-related connection disability. So whether that is hearing loss to knee issues to an issue that when they first got out of the military, because of their age, it wasn't a big deal. Most times they just soldiered on with it to where they're getting a little bit older in time and they need to be able to get some benefits, whether that's medical, monetary, or with some type of device.
Okay, well, we can hear the music, which tells us we're going to break, so we will continue this when we get back. Stay with us. We are talking about Veterans Affairs, the VFW, and about the lawsuit that the VA has. Stay with us.
This year, 28,000 Americans will be diagnosed with oral cancer. Every year, 7,000 Americans die of oral cancer.
I'm Eva Cohen, and I'm an oral cancer survivor. I didn't fit the profile. I didn't smoke or drink. I had no family history of cancer, I was 31 years old. I went to see my dentist about a sore in my mouth that wouldn't heal. It was oral cancer. I had to have a radical neck dissection and a portion of my tongue reconstructed. I didn't know if I was going to live or die.
I'm Surgeon General Richard Carmona. The survival rate for oral cancer is only 50%. Oral cancer can happen to anyone. If you have a sore or lesion in your mouth that doesn't heal within 2 weeks, see your dentist. Early detection is the key.
Early detection saves lives. I know.
1 in 8 Americans goes hungry. One idea helped change that. A community started a garden that blossomed into farmers markets. 1 in 6 children lives in poverty. One group of women found an answer by opening a daycare center that their neighbors could afford. Today, 36 million Americans live in poverty. But one by one, people are helping themselves and each other to change the picture of poverty to one of hope. For easy ways you can help, visit povertyusa.org.
2 words for you. Pop quiz. Ready? Name any funny movie. A drama. Name a mystery. And one more thing. Name the movie your kids saw today in science class.
Know what really matters. Know about your kid's school. And know about your kid. Find out 100 ways to know more, do more.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. I'm Bettina Lawton, and I am your host, and we are talking about veterans tonight with Gary Kelch. He is the commander of District 10 of the VFW, and Joshua Lawton-Bellis. He is the inspector for District 10. And when we went to the break, we were talking about a lawsuit that the Disabled American Veterans and the VFW filed last week against the Department of Veterans Affairs over how, I guess, disability claims are filed.
Correct. So the way in which previously, before the VA made this rule change, that a claim could be filed was literally, this is not an extrapolation, a veteran could take a white piece of paper, draw a stick figure and say, ouch. And then with their social security number, submit it to the VA. And the VA had a duty, a legal duty, to then go out, reach out to this veteran, and then procure all the medical information that they possibly could to provide this veteran with either medical attention, with rating, or with a response back saying they don't deserve that. The problem is that it's a dual-headed sword, right? It both cuts for the benefit of both the VA and the veteran, but also cuts against it. The reality is, like every system that's set up, there are individuals who take advantage of that system. And for the individuals who may have not known when they went to Iraq, being around a burn pit was a bad deal for them, or the individuals who suffer from Agent Orange, so they don't necessarily know what's wrong with them, so they need the VA to go and look into that for them. That type of system where I don't know what's wrong with me, but something definitely is a highly effective, highly efficient way to get veterans in and give them the care they need.
Well, isn't that actually the appropriate way to do it? Most of the soldiers, they aren't medical people. I mean, you were a combat medic, you might be a step or two ahead of it, but for the average soldier, isn't that where the burden ought to be, is on the VA to figure out what's the matter with you?
In some respects. In some respects, it's definitely on, it needs to be on the VA to try to help them, guide them through what the issue is with them. Okay. The unfortunate matter about that, though, is that there's a financial reality of this scenario. And really what happens is when that veteran submits that ouch claim, a stick figure claim, they will be back paid to that point. That's when their claim actually starts. And in most, anywhere else you go, that's actually not when your claim starts, right? You compile information together to be able to make a claim, to be able to say, this is what's going on with me. And so in the system that the VA is trying to create, which both reacts to the idea from the VFW, the American Legion, and all the VSOs, you need to be more efficient, you need to be able to be quicker. We can't teach a computer to look at that claim and say, ouch, that's something I need to look at. It needs to actually go through a form to be able to know what is happening, what is going on. And the reality is that one ouch claim, while we want to be able to help that one individual, there is the idea of the whole entire population. So for that one individual that you're helping with, there is all these other claims that back up at the end of the day that you can't deal with. And this goes back really to one of the solutions the VFW has, which the VA, for whatever reason, has kind of fought back against, which is the idea that you need to hire more claims processors. Right? It's a very simple idea. However, what the VA has done is put a lot of its stock, a lot of its money into what's called the Veterans Benefit Management System. For anybody who's interested in a long story of how maybe something shouldn't work, I would Google the Veterans Benefit Management System. And the idea was we could make a computer do all of these claims and pensions, right, and be able to look at everything that we need to have. And it's a great idea in theory. However, in effect, in acting of it, it's a very difficult notion. It's a very difficult thing to do. And so at the end of the day, when you're really trying to help a total population is that while we think it's becoming smaller per capita, more and more veterans are actually using the VA, as we find out coming out of the wars, A, either because they have a higher survivability rate than was before past, B, because of the social stigma that is no longer related with certain issues that were for Vietnam veterans, Desert Storm veterans, and also because we are starting to recognize increased medical issues, right? We know more now than we did in the 1960s. And so because of all those reasons, we have more and more veterans using what is already a system that is stretched to its limits. It's no doubt in anybody's mind that Congress paid a lot for us to go to war, but when it came to taking care of the men and women who came home, they didn't do that justice. And so really that's what you're fighting with, and the VA is saying, look, we have all these things that are being placed against us. We have timelines that Congress is saying for us to meet. For us to meet what Congress is telling us to do, for us to be able to do what the VFW and the American Legion want us to do, here is what we need to have happen. And in the modern age of where almost everybody is used to filling out a form for whatever, you fill out forms now for your pizza,
Right.
It's kind of what the VA is trying to get to, where you can fill out a form to get it done. It's not a perfect system, and there's definitely a lot of issues with it. However, we need to, the old system wasn't a perfect system either, and we shouldn't kid ourselves with that.
So now if you want to file a form, you have to do it online? Is that the...
No. So it's technically illegal for the VA to only accept online forms. You have to also provide people the ability to submit a paper form. Because the reality is they can actually submit almost any type of media. So they could send a thumb drive in with, here's my claim, here's everything I have. And the VA would have to stick it into the computer, take it out, they'd most likely print it, send it to somebody for them to scan it back into the computer system. Government inefficiency at its best.
Seriously.
But the reality is there are forms, just like anything else you'd have to fill out for the government, that you would need to fill out. There's medical records that you can obtain. And it is a process. And you don't need to have everything. I mean, that's the other part about it. This is not the claims process where you have to have everything. This is a claims process where you need to have more than what you used to have. But you don't have to have total fidelity in what you do have. And the reality is while we're going after the VA, the Department of Defense is just as much into this idea of being able to certify that we have all the medical records there are no other medical records that exist. Because even in this day and age where most people are used to healthcare information exchanges, where my medical records are online in the military, it's still, you have a system, and the VA was one of the first individuals who created electronic medical record system, where you still have individual service members, whether on boats, whether they're actually in combat in the field, a lot of their medical records are still paper-based, and not all of that is getting into the system. So before that, there was a big lag that the DoD would have to say, we're searching still for your medical records, the VA is still searching for your medical records, and how do we ever know when we have all of your medical records? Because part of this is being able to definitively say to a veteran, we've looked at everything there is, here is your rating. And at the end of the day, one of the things that we will see, because this is really the way it's going, is that there is the backlog that we've talked about, right? The backlog. Undersecretary Hickey keeps on telling people it's shrinking. It's true. I mean, it's shrinking, right? But it's like a balloon, right? You squeeze it on one end, just because the other end doesn't have a lot of air in it, doesn't mean you've lost air, right? It's actually just gone to the other side. And what you have is you have a court at the end where veterans can go back and say, you gave me 40%, you gave me 50%, you said my injury wasn't service connected. I refute that, and now I'm going to go to basically a judge. VA has their own judges to go and look at this. And what we're going to be doing, and what's going to happen, you start seeing it, is yes, the backlog is coming down, but the caseload for the courts is increasing. And so reality, what the VA, what DoD, what Congress has done is they said, we're going to take this one thing that everybody's focused on, very easy for the media to get a hold of, and veterans to say, yes, the backlog's shrinking, and we're just going to move it off to the other side and hope nobody notices.
So it really isn't getting absolutely resolved, it's just moving it into a different phase.
It is, on the hope that it will be such a difficult process for most veterans, because once again, let's go back to the normal, the normal Americans, to work through this long process. They've already had to go through a little bit of a process to get their benefits, or a lot of a process, and now they're being told, you know what, you really should have gotten 70% versus 50%. Or what is even, what is equally as terrible is this idea that we're going to give veterans, because we're going to speed them through the process, we will give them 70% when in reality what they really should have got was 30%. And when you do that on order of millions upon millions of veterans for the rest of their lives, because the VA technically can go back and take away disability from you, but the reality is they don't, except in extreme cases. So for some of these young men and women who are 20, 30 years old, for the next 30, 40, 50 years, we will be paying them a significant sum that is tax-free. So part of this is we need, as America, to make sure we're getting this right. Not for all of us, but also veterans. Because every dime we pay to a veteran in excess of what they should be getting, that Congress says they should be getting, is something that will not go to health, will not go to cemeteries, will not go to supporting small business loans. That's the reality of the situation.
It's a finite amount of money that we have to work with.
Okay.
Yeah, and going on Josh's analogy of the balloon, what VA healthcare did in trying to get down the numbers for public image was focus on, as Josh said, one aspect, the claims. What's happened is we've seen a rise in the backlog of the more difficult claims, claims that have multiple reasons for being submitted. They've got multiple injuries. And we've also seen an extreme backlog in what they call the the Board of Veterans and getting an appeal. Appeals now are running on the average of 3 years.
Oh, wow.
So while they have squeezed the balloon to get the big number down, it's manifested itself in the backside of creating a hardship in other areas.
If the VA, if they really wanted to address this issue, because that's really what Gary and I are talking about, it's that issue of, you have this problem, and believe me, having sat in those meetings, having sat with senior leadership, having been there when it was presented to people like Undersecretary Hickey, they know what their issues are. They know what their problems are. It's just like Gary said, it's no secret in the VA. The reality is it's a point system for raters, and they get 1 point per case, per claim. And so whether I take a simple claim, which maybe you have hearing loss, and that's an automatic, for most people, 10%, or it's a complex claim. You have traumatic brain injury, you have a whole bunch of other associated things. It's still a 1-for-1 rating issue for me. And it's also a 1-for-1 rating issue for the external clinicians that the VA uses. So clinicians still look at people, and it's still a time-based system, just like regular medical care is. So they'll go and they say, well, if I can get Gary out of the system, because you know what, I need to do an eye test, a hearing test, and he's out. But Josh, on the other hand, well, that's a long litany of tests. Well, Josh kind of keeps on getting to the back of the pile while we get the Garys of the world out, because that's how we're going to pay them, and that's how they're going to make their money. And that is the type of system you see, and that is, quite frankly, dollars to donuts. I'd be willing to bet that when you open the boxes in Salem, right, or you go down to the other the other regional offices of the VA, where literally, not even a joke, the floor was buckling. It was a structural hazard because there were so many boxes of paper there. So many boxes of paper that the floor, an office building floor, was buckling. I'm willing to bet you dollars of donuts that those cases weren't the simple cases. Those cases were the difficult cases for them to be able to rate. And so they kept on being pushed back and pushed back. And it's the same thing when you look at Philadelphia, who, by the way, the woman who runs that was the regional director for all of these things. And so it's not because of her, but these are the type of things that are there. It's a shuffling of the government, and those are the issues we face.
Wow. Well, we'll see what happens with the lawsuit. I want to thank you both for coming in and talking about veterans issues again. We could go on for the whole hour, but we can't. So I do want to thank you both for coming, and we'll be seeing you again towards the end of the year when we do the next Veterans Show for Veterans Day.
Thanks, Bettina.
Thank you.
Just books at the library.
There's more than just books at the library.
Excuse me. There's more than just books at the library.
Il n'y a plus que de livres à la bibliothèque.
Hello. You have a lot of great books here today. You know there's more than just books at the library.
I know.
There's more than just books at the library.
I don't want to be hooked to a machine.
I want all the medical treatment available to me.
I wouldn't want my family to have to make this decision.
My doctor knows what's best for me.
An advance directive is your life on your terms. Talk with your family. Decide what's right for you. Then put it in writing.
Documenting my wishes today means my family won't have to make heart-wrenching decisions later.
To learn more, visit www.putitinwriting.org.
1,200 American youth run away from their homes every day. The National Runaway Switchboard is here to help. 1-800-RUNAWAY. If you are a runaway, Thinking about running away from home, or a parent or guardian concerned about issues facing your child, call us 24 hours a day. 1-800-RUNAWAY. In times of crisis, hope is just a phone call away. 1-800.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. I'm Bettina Lawton. This is Inside Scoop, and I am your host. And we are switching slightly on the veterans issue. We're continuing with veterans, but this time we're going to be talking about students. We have in our area here George Mason University, and we have with us tonight Ryan Barnett. He is the Operations Manager and Transition Coordinator for the Office of Military Services at George Mason University. And we also have Jeremy Goodwin. He is the Assistant Transition Coordinator at that office and a current student at George Mason. Interestingly, they were both in the Marine Corps. I hadn't realized that. Ryan had been in the Marine Corps from 2002 to 6, and then again from 2008 to 9. He served multiple deployments in Iraq. Jeremy was a combat engineer from 2006 to 13. He was in Iraq in 2009, Afghanistan from 2010 to 11, and in Libya for 2013. He has just completed his sophomore year at George Mason as a civil engineering major, and he comes from a family of service. His father is a retired Air Force colonel. And welcome to both of you. This is your maiden voyage on television, so we'll be kind. It'll
Absolutely.
work.
Thank you.
Ryan, tell me about what the Office of Military Services is at Mason. How long has it been there? What are you supposed to be doing there?
Mainly we hang out. The Office of Military Services actually started around 2009, and in fact, Mr. Lawton was one of the gentlemen that helped create it. In 2009, when you had post 9/11 switching over from the Montgomery GI Bill 30 to post 9/11, there wasn't a lot of resources at George Mason at the time, and so a group of students and faculty members saw a need for this office to be created, and thus Mason decided to give funds to the office. Originally they were working off of a grant, and now it's actually funded by the state.
Okay.
And so we're mainly there to assist veterans, spouses, dependents on transitioning to Mason and becoming a student.
So are all of the students at Mason former military, or do you have as well an active duty contingent who are there? We've got a lot of military personnel in the area.
We do. We have an active duty contingent. We have reserve contingents there, and then of course we have our bread and butter, which are the veterans, and then of course we also have spouses and other dependents as well.
Okay. And then, so you both have transition in the name of your titles. So is that transitioning them from sort of a military mindset life into a student one or a civilian one? What's the transition about?
So it's kind of both. It's transitioning out of the military or transitioning from, George Mason is a huge transfer school. A lot of our students are transfer students, meaning they've come from a community college or they've come from out of state to us. So it's just military and transferring from school to school as well.
Okay, but all of the people you serve are military transitioning, not just like somebody in Northern Virginia who went to the community college here and went over there. You only do with veterans, spouses, families.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay, now, so how big is this office then? How many staff people do you have over there?
Okay, so we have...
It's just you, right?
No, that'd be nice. No, we have Miss Jennifer Connor, she's the director of OMS, and then there's myself, Jeremy, we have another gentleman, Jonah. So overall we have about 8 people in the office, because we also, the VA gives us money to take other veterans that are using the GI Bill and give them a work-study status. So they're able to make money from the VA and go to school. So it's kind of like a little part-time job for them.
So you run work study through your office?
Correct.
For the veterans? Oh,
Yes.
I didn't know that. And so what do you actually do? Either one of you actually. I mean, your average day is what? Do you meet with a lot of veterans? Are you meeting with the professors? What are you doing?
I can speak from my perspective, being a student as well as a staff member at the Office of Military Services. Obviously, not when I'm not in class, I'm at the office. But typically what a daily interaction would be, we kind of being present, being available. We work on our homework a lot of times when there's no one at the office. But when someone comes in, it may be a current student, it may be a prospective student, and we'll sit down with them. We'll kind of hear their story, where are they coming from, what are they trying to do, what are their concerns, is there an issue? And at that point in time, it may be a very quick, simple solution for us. So we can give them some information that sheds some light on the question they have. Or if it's a little bit more of a complicated issue, then it elevates from the work studies employees and then myself at the assistant transition coordinator level to possibly Ryan or Miss Jennifer Connors.
Okay. So what kind of problems do people come in with?
Many.
Okay.
We also process dependents that need to re-up their military ID. So they're about to turn 21, and the only way that they can keep their military benefits, their mother or father still on active duty, they have to be full-time enrolled. So of course, the 12th hour comes on the night before the 21st birthday, and we're getting the call, I need verification on my enrollment to keep the ID card and to keep their benefits. A lot of issues come up with, do my credits transfer? Like what I'm taking from the military, does it transfer into George Mason? How many credits do I get? Where am I going to live? I need money right now, kind of problems.
Well, I remember back in the day when the office was first getting set up, and I was aware of it.
The closet down the hall.
The closet down the hallway. That there was a continual problem of people not getting their money in time, and tuition would be due and they didn't have it. And is that still an ongoing problem? Has that gotten resolved?
It's not. That's pretty much has worked itself out of the system. When the 9/11 bill came around, you still had people transitioning from Montgomery 30 and over. And then of course, it was such a great benefit that it was quickly overwhelmed. And so the VA was having a hard time setting up the process in which to pay the service member and the school. It's pretty much running itself now. The only time that you have issues with payments is normally when a student fills out saying I'm registering for classes at George Mason, they then have to come back and then fill out another form, just like Mr. Lawton was talking about, another form to let the VA know this is what I'm taking. And more often than not, the student has filled out the George Mason registration, but they haven't filled out the registration for the VA. And so a lot of times that's the problem in getting paid, is they have forgotten or have delayed their process of filling out that second registration form.
Now, does the VA have the option, if I'm a veteran and I'm coming over to Mason and I'm going to take basket weaving, does the VA have the ability to say, nah, civil engineering okay, basket weaving not so much, or they do sort of equality?
In order for the VA, in order to utilize the GI Bill, you have to be enrolled in classes in a declared degree program, whether that be a major, a double major, or a minor. The classes you're taking have to be part of a degree program.
But now how does that work? Because I read, not specifically with respect to veterans, but with respect to people going to college, that they don't really have any idea what they want as a major. And so if you're going in, and you just finished your sophomore year, I mean, you wanted to be a civil engineer, although I understand you changed your major.
I did.
How does that work? I mean, is it easy to change your major? So if it has to be a declared major, can somebody go in and say, I'm going to major in English, and then say a year into it, okay, now I want to be in civil engineering? Is there some kind of a process to do that?
Yeah, absolutely. You can, he's changed his majors, I changed mine 3 times.
Good heavens.
Good heavens. Trying to figure out what you needed to do, It's just it's a form. It's another form that you fill out. And so most of the students that are going to transfer over, say they're starting out as a freshman, they never took any college, they're going to note that on their form saying that they're degree seeking. And then later on, within a certain time frame, they have to say, okay, this is the degree I want.
Okay, but the VA will pay for it even though they're just seeking a degree.
Correct.
And when I changed my major, that was where the Office of Military Services came to help me, and this was before I took on a position there, and I was a global affairs major, and life interests changed, and career direction changed, and I decided that I wanted to be a civil engineering major, and I had not completed the proper, not completed the proper, just haven't done, wasn't up to speed on all my math. So calculus and physics and all that, and that doesn't usually fall within the global affairs degree path. Right. So I came to the Office of Military Services. I knew that I needed to be taking classes within a declared degree program, and that's where I was able to, lay out a degree path and say this is, where I need to be at this point in time, and then I was actually able to be certified as a pre-civil engineering major, which allowed me to take the necessary coursework to actually fulfill the School of Engineering's prerequisites. And had I not come into the Office of Military Service and one of the past employees, Katie Fox, the former office manager, had taken me into her office and kind of explained everything, I would not have known how to do that. And I wouldn't have been able to easily transition over to a very different degree path.
Now, what kind of training do the people who work in the office have? Is this all on-the-job training where you had to do it yourself and so now you know it? Because it sounds a lot of form-based, a lot of rule-based kind of things.
It's always changing. So the majority of the training you get is OJT. Okay. And then other than that, we do have formal training as far as, here's what you need to know as far as benefits and how that works. But a lot of it's OJT because you're always going to get a new situation. Mm-hmm. Not to mention we're implementing and we're helping implement a federal benefit to a state school. And then you have that state school has, plethora amount of criteria that they have to meet through other credit, agencies. So it's there's layers.
Now, George Mason used to have the largest number of veterans of any of the schools in Virginia. Is that still true? How many veterans do you have over there?
We're topping up just over 3,000. And
really?
We have a little bit more just that are what we call declared, meaning they came to George Mason, they say they're a veteran, but they're not using any benefits. We've got about 3,000, we've got a little over 3,000 that are using benefits, and then we've got a little bit more that have self-identified themselves as veterans.
Why wouldn't they use their benefits? They're great
They might have run out. I mean, that's a big thing too. You have people that are running out of benefits. You have people that, might not have, I don't want to say earned the benefit, but, something might have happened there as far as them having benefits.
Okay. And what amount of time do you have to use your benefits? If you're trying to get a 4-year degree, is it 4 years is going to get it covered, or?
Typically, you'll be able to complete the full 8 semesters and have a little bit left over if you do more than 12 credits per semester, about 15 credits per semester, you'll be able to finish your 4-year degree.
Okay. Well, we're going to come right back after this break and talk some more about George Mason and their veterans.
Osama bin Laden calls getting nuclear weapons a religious duty.
Today, materials that can be used to make nuclear weapons are stored in more than 40 countries.
Sometimes protected by just a chain link fence.
Yet not enough is being done to lock down these materials
before terrorists steal them.
Why did we learn all this?
My mother,
my son,
my sister-in-law
were all murdered September 11th.
Help protect America.
Together we can.
Please join us.
The stem cell issue is being debated throughout the country. Truth is, most everyone has an opinion, even if they don't know the facts.
Let's stop arguing and start really understanding the potential of stem cell research.
For us and for millions of Americans living with disabilities, get the facts.
Call 1-877-842-3442 for free information from the Stem Cell Research Foundation. That's 1-877-842-3442.
Following the tragic events of September 11th, there have been hundreds of violent attacks against innocent Americans.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
Remember, please stop the hate.
We're stronger when we are united.
Remember what that flag you're waving stands for.
One nation,
under God,
indivisible,
with liberty
and justice
for all.
In America, there's either room for everyone, or it's not America.
Don't pick the wrong fight.
Let's keep America land of the free.
Stop the hate. Planning a home renovation? Put this at the top of your to-do list. Because after 10 years, none of you are protected against tetanus and another potentially fatal disease, diphtheria. A minor injury, such as a cut or a scrape, can put you at risk for a tetanus infection. And while safety gear offers some protection, an up-to-date vaccination called the TD Booster is the best insurance against tetanus. So get the TD Booster. If it's been 10, do it again.
We're back to the Inside Scoop. Here again, your host.
Welcome back. I'm Bettina Lawton. I'm your host. This is Inside Scoop. And we are talking about veterans, and we're particularly talking about veterans at this point over at George Mason University. And we have with us Ryan Barnett and Jeremy Goodwin. They are with the Office of Military Services at George Mason. And I neglected to ask you, where are you actually located? That campus always confuses me. Where, if somebody out there is watching and says, gee, I didn't even know we had this, how do they find you guys?
Well, we're currently at the Johnson Center, which is the main
building
on, right? It has all the food, it has, all the entertainment, room 245.
Okay.
But we are moving. So we'll be moving mid-June to a building called Student Union Building 1, or Sub 1. And we'll be right by the Chick-fil-A, so it'll be easy to find us. Plus the bar is right down the Rathskeller is right down the way from us, so.
Well, that makes it a convenient stop off.
Sure does.
On your way.
It sure does.
Good planning.
Yeah,
Good
it's
planning.
crawl to work.
Oh, let me ask you about this. In 2012, I saw that George Mason was ranked one of the top universities for veterans. Is that still the case now in 15?
Yes, we are ranked number 38 overall in the U.S.
Oh, that's very good. So you've got over 3,000 veterans. Now, do you break that down demographically? How many women veterans do you have?
Right now, we're currently at about 1,300 women veterans.
Well, that's a good number. And are there special programs for the women veterans versus the men, or it's all the same?
It's all the same. We try to be inclusive, and we try to we try to keep it like the military, where we don't really change things up with this is only for women, this is only for men.
Okay.
If there's a need that arises, we will address it, and we will be more than happy to create a program, work on a program if need be. But right now, it's an even playing field as far as programs.
Now, let me ask you about something else, because I thought this was an interesting concept. There's this executive order that President Obama did in 2012, establishing principles of excellence for educational institutions serving service members and their families. And one of the items talked about an individual plan for each veteran. You've got 3,000 people. So when they say individual plan, does that mean Jeremy's got a plan and it's only Jeremy's? There isn't, nobody else in that cadre of 3,000 veterans has one like Jeremy's? Or are there standard plans that say, okay, civil engineering, everybody's got the same individual plan, so to speak?
The plan that is referenced there is essentially a student's education plan, meaning their degree plan, what classes they need to take, and when they need to take them to meet the 120 credits or whatever credits you need to meet in order to get your bachelor's or your master's.
So everybody has that. That's just not a veterans thing.
It's not a veterans thing. You're just like every other student. You're going to have your own individual plan.
Oh, I thought it made it sound as if there was some special veteran component here.
Well, I mean, part of the reasons for this Principles of Excellence is just the fact that when the 9/11 GI Bill came out, there were so many agencies that were, knocking down veterans' doors trying to get that federal money. And so a lot of times you would have veterans unknowingly signing up for programs that had no plan, meaning there was no criteria they had to meet, it was ever changing, and essentially they were, them and the government were being schemed out of money and benefits.
Okay. The other thing is, how much individualized help do you get? There was on the website something called the GI Bill Comparison Tool for Veterans, and I looked at it and went, wow, you really have to sort of be into this. It's requiring a whole lot of work. Now, that seemed to be to select schools, but is that something that you all help people with if somebody's thinking of coming to Mason, or do you only kick into gear if they're already there?
No, I mean, we're constantly getting phone calls from people, active duty overseas, even spouses and children overseas, or even out of state that are wanting, hey, I was just helping a Marine the other day down in Virginia Beach, and he needs some help on what was the next step. And, we're helping people that may not even get into Mason at that time. So we're going to help anybody that comes to our office.
How unique is this Office of Military Services? Do all of the major universities in Virginia have this, or is this something that's unique to just George Mason? Do you know?
Many universities are adopting these same type of offices of military services. So no, we are not the only service out there with this.
Just the best?
I would like to think so, yeah. We care.
We care. Okay. Well, what kind of, you've got the GI Bill. What does that actually cover? The new GI Bill is how I always hear it referred to as.
Depends.
So what do you get?
It depends on your status. If you are a veteran, and the magic number is 36 months cumulative service after 9/11. That entitles you to 100% of the benefits available under the GI Bill. And then it goes in 6 months increments. If you served 2 years cumulative active duty service after 9/11, then you get I believe the math works out to 70%. So what that covers is it covers in-state tuition at George Mason and tuition fees in its entirety. It gives you the beneficiary a $1,000 per academic year book stipend that's paid out on a per credit hour basis every semester. And then also an MAH or BAH component that's paid out. It's a housing allowance, right? That's paid out on a monthly basis on a prorate amount. So you would receive a partial payment for the months of August and December of a fall semester where you are not in school the entirety of the month, and then a full payment September, October, and November.
Okay.
And that's the monetary components of the GI Bill.
Now, is this the 36 months post 9/11? You guys are actually deployed into war zones or conflicts, but there are bunches of folks who never left the U.S. Does everybody qualify, or is there a combat? Is there any kind of, do you get any kind of uptick in benefit for having been in combat versus not?
No. This is the post 9/11 is the new Montgomery 30 GI Bill, which you used to pay $100 of your base pay into that up to 12 months with a $600 kicker is what they called it. That was the original GI Bill. Now post 9/11 comes out, and I don't believe service members actually pay into it during their time, but everybody is given that ability if they served after September of 2001.
Okay. All right. So is the only thing a veteran is eligible for, if you take the GI Bill, do you qualify for anything else? Can you stack it with other funds available from George Mason or from Virginia, or does one disqualify the other or have offsets?
No. You can only use one benefit at a time. Like, for example, I was using the Montgomery 30 GI Bill. Once the post 9/11 came out, I transferred over to that, meaning I cannot go back. I've now made my one decision to use post 9/11. Once I was able to use that, once I ran out, I was also able to use the Chapter 31 benefit, which is vocational rehabilitation. There's many chapters, there's many benefits that can be used. However, it becomes one of those things you have to choose one, and you can only use one benefit at a time.
But you can line them up in a row, so you extinguish the one and you can then go on a different one?
But at each stage you have to qualify for it. So, at least with vocational rehab, I believe that you got to be 30% or more disabled to use it. So you might rate it, meaning you're eligible for it, but the VA might determine, we're not going to pay for you depending on what plan you submit to them and how you want to take it.
But it doesn't preclude you from using outside scholarships, receiving federal Stafford loans if you like, or even the Pell Grant. Virginia has a grant, a Commonwealth grant, depending on your tax status. Basically, the GI Bill does not preclude you from also being able to utilize some of those benefits.
Okay. Let me ask you about what is a battle buddy? I saw this. You have something called a battle buddy program, and I'm like, what in the world is that at George Mason?
So the Battle Buddy program at George Mason is one that was started a couple years ago, and the goal of the program is to align or match together veterans of similar majors, as one veteran may be in more of an upperclassman standing and a new incoming freshman or new incoming transfer student. And the thought process behind the program was, if a veteran had been in a civil engineering program for 3 years, maybe this was their senior year and they're about ready to graduate, and a new student comes on, overseas we always had a battle buddy, someone that was there with us by our side the whole way. We could always count on that person to be there, or always looking behind you, making sure everything is in order. And so that was the program intent as well, is someone there that's by your side that's going to kind of help guide you through a little bit. Maybe maybe they have a couple extra textbooks laying around, or maybe they've taken some professors that were great or not so great, and just kind of be that guiding light through the program, because it is a little scary sometimes coming off 4 years, 8 years, maybe even longer on active duty, and you're stepping into a whole new world. So having someone who's been there, done that, that can kind of help guide you through the process is a big help.
Now, does everybody get one, or is this some kind of a voluntary thing? It sounds like mentoring.
It is a mentorship. But it's all voluntary. It's all voluntary. Okay. And we help, and the biggest thing for our office is, we just let people come in. It's a nice, safe place for them just to come, meet other veterans. I mean, that's how most of us met one another. And that's where you see most of that relationship happening.
So what are the kinds of problems that veterans run into? I mean, you were just saying they could have been on active duty for 4, 8, 10, whatever years, and all of a sudden they're a freshman in college. That's got to be a major change, a major adjustment.
It is. Yep. It is. It's a major adjustment. I can speak personally from my experiences, and it was very difficult walking into a classroom for the first time. Being 27 years old and sitting in a classroom with 18, 19-year-old other students. I couldn't relate to them on their level. And so it was very difficult. And I had left, fellow Marines in service, and then as some of us had gotten out, we'd all gone our separate ways. We'd always, on active duty, always kind of had that group of guys, whether it was in your shop or in your office or out in the field, that you always kind of had that common denominator of always being together, active duty, kind of going through the same thing at the same time. But going into the university setting, it was very different. That was one of my biggest changes.
Well, let me ask you real quick. Do most of the vets actually graduate, the ones that go to Mesa?
Yes.
Excellent. And tell me what the hours are so people know when they can come and see you.
They can see us anytime between 9 and 5 p.m.
All right.
Monday through Friday.
Monday through Friday.
Well, I want to thank you so much for coming. I had no idea all of the things that your office did, and it was great to have you here. We'll have you back.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.